The road stretched wide and quiet, slick with rain, reflecting streetlights that flickered like dying candles. Only a few cars rolled past, their headlights slicing through the dark Alabama night. It was just after 11 p.m., the kind of hour when most people just want to get home, forget the day, and breathe. Commander Janelle Hayes had been driving for nearly 2 hours. Her fingers tapped lightly against the steering wheel as an old jazz tune played low through the car speakers, familiar and calming. She wasn't in uniform, just a fitted black sweater and jeans, hair pulled back into a tight bun, neat, invisible, or so she thought. Then she saw the lights, red and blue, fast and aggressive, gaining in the rear view. Her stomach tightened. Not with fear exactly, not anymore. More like exhaustion. She knew how this game worked. Still, she signaled, changed lanes, and guided her sedan onto the shoulder. Car in park, hands visible. Breathe. She'd served 15 years in the Navy. Tours overseas, emergency landings, live fire drills. And yet this late-night ritual still demanded its own kind of discipline. The white cruiser pulled in behind her. The engine growled for a moment before it quieted. The officer didn't rush. He got out slow, boots hitting the wet asphalt like he owned it, one hand on his belt, the other shining a flashlight. She caught his face in the mirror. Square jaw, buzz cut, mid-40s maybe. The kind of man who expected obedience and didn't ask twice. The beam of light hit her window as he approached. License and registration. No hello. No reason. His voice was clipped, mechanical. Janelle met his eyes through the side mirror. Calm. Then slowly reached into the glove box, handed him the documents. Was I speeding? She asked. Her tone even, almost bored. He didn't answer. Just took her paperwork and scanned it. Tail lights out. That didn't sound right. She frowned. I had them checked a week ago. He looked up. You arguing with me? There it was. That moment, the temperature in the air changed. She felt it before he even raised his voice. That quiet collision between power and defiance, and the expectation that she, like so many before her, would fold. She didn't fold. I'm not arguing, she said. Just telling you that I had it checked. Step out of the vehicle. He didn't wait for a response. He didn't explain. He didn't care. She took a long breath, eyes flicking to the dark road ahead. No headlights, no witnesses. Just the sound of light rain hitting her windshield. She tapped her fingers once on the steering wheel, then moved. Mind telling me why? Because I said so. He smirked when he said it. She didn't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Just unbuckled, opened the door and stepped out. Cool air hit her skin. The road felt too quiet. Turn around. Hands on the hood. She hesitated. For what reason? He stepped in, just a little too close. Are you resisting? Her pulse ticked up, but her expression didn't move. Number, I'm asking you a question. His eyes narrowed, amusement gone. He pressed the radio to his shoulder. Got a non-compliant driver here. Turn around. She looked at him square. Officer, I know what my rights are, and I know exactly what you're not allowed to do. That did it. His jaw flexed. You're under arrest. He reached for her wrist. She stepped back, just enough to avoid his grip. Under arrest for what? Obstructing an officer. She exhaled through her nose. So that's how this was going to go. Fight or fold, push or wait. Janelle wasn't going to be another statistic on a cold report, so she turned, hands on the hood. The metal was cold. He yanked her arms back hard and locked the cuffs tight, way too tight. You don't know what you're doing, she said quietly. He shoved her toward the cruiser. Lady, I know exactly what I'm doing. But he didn't, not even close. The plastic seat dug into her back. The cuffs burned. She kept her breath steady, eyes on the divider. Outside, he was talking into the radio, laughing. She waited, calculated. She'd been through combat simulations and intelligence briefings. She had handled classified data, navigated chain of command chaos, even stood in front of commanding officers who tried to rattle her. But nothing compared to this. A man with a badge, a fragile ego, and no oversight. He got into the car, threw it in gear. The cruiser jerked forward, lights still flashing. Most people know when to shut up, he said. She said nothing. Most people don't question a traffic stop. Still nothing. You military? She stared ahead. Yeah, figured. You act like it. Like the rules don't apply. He smiled like he'd won. Bet you thought I'd back down once you mentioned it. She didn't mention it. And yet somehow he was already building a story to justify himself. He clicked his tongue. Shame. Could have avoided all this. She looked at him then. Just for a second. You think this is about attitude? He frowned. You'll see. Her voice was calm, but the power in it made him shift. He faced forward again, tightened his grip on the wheel. She didn't need to speak again, because she already knew. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. While we're here, if you've got thoughts, I'd love to hear them. Comment below. And if this hit home, a like and a share go a long way. The station was a low-slung building of gray concrete and fluorescent fatigue. Nothing about it felt like justice. Commander Janelle Hayes stepped out of the cruiser slowly, her wrists still locked tight behind her. The cuffs had started cutting into her skin a while ago, and she had said nothing. She wasn't going to give him the pleasure. Sergeant Rick Dalton smirked as he led her inside. A bored desk officer barely glanced up as they passed. No questions, no raised eyebrows. Just routine. The place smelled like old sweat and burned coffee. Fingerprinting, mugshot, processing. Janelle didn't flinch, didn't blink. Dalton yanked her toward the holding cell like he was dragging some nuisance off the street. You think you're real clever, huh? She looked sideways at him. I don't have to think. That got to him. His hand tightened around her wrist. His jaw clenched. Enjoy your stay, he muttered, shoving the door open. She caught herself before she stumbled. The cell was small. Cold bench. Metal toilet in the corner. One flickering light above. The door slammed shut. The lock clicked. She sat down, rolled her shoulders. The cuffs were finally off, but her skin was still pulsing. This wasn't the worst place she'd been held. Not by a long shot. She'd spent nights on foreign soil, in temporary shelters after bomb threats. She'd once been stuck on a grounded aircraft carrier for 72 hours with nothing but a granola bar and her willpower. But this was something else. This was home soil. This was betrayal by someone sworn to protect. Through the bars, she could hear soft chatter from the front desk. Phones ringing, keys clinking, somebody laughing too loud. She closed her eyes, breathed deep, control the breath, control the mind. Basic training, day one. Then she heard it, the rhythm of heavy boots, sharp, deliberate. Dalton. She didn't open her eyes. She knew it was him. He stopped just outside her cell, arms crossed, same smirk. Comfy? She didn't answer. He stepped closer to the bars. You know, if you just cooperated, we wouldn't be here. She tilted her head slightly. Oh, I'm exactly where I need to be. That rattled him. Just a little, enough to make his mouth tighten. Nobody's coming for you tonight, lady, he shrugged. Guess that means you've got time to think about how wrong you were. She didn't blink. He leaned in, dropped his voice. See, people like you don't finish that sentence, she said. He laughed. That laugh men use when they're trying to pretend they're still in control. Then footsteps again. A younger officer, early 20s maybe, stepped into the corridor. His name tag read Officer Bennett. Clipboard in hand, nervous energy all over his face. Sergeant? Dalton didn't turn around. We just got a call. Still no movement. Bennett shifted his feet. It's from someone high up. Pentagon extension. They're asking questions. Dalton finally turned. You sure? Yeah, and I think you should hear it. There was a pause. Janelle watched them both, silent. Dalton's jaw worked. He glanced at her, then back to Bennett. Fine. He followed the younger officer down the hall, grumbling. Janelle sat back, hands folded. A Pentagon extension. That would do it. She wasn't bragging. She wasn't arrogant. She was prepared, because men like Dalton counted on silence, on victims without rank or resources. But she wasn't one of them. She sat still, eyes on the bars. The conversation from the hallway was muffled but tense. She picked up enough. Bennett's voice was cautious. Dalton's was tight and defensive. Then footsteps again. Faster this time. Dalton stormed back, color high in his face. fist clenched. "What the hell did you do?" She didn't move. "I didn't do anything." She leaned forward, elbows on knees. "But people talk, and I have friends in high places." He stared at her, really looked at her for the first time. The realization clicked behind his eyes. This wasn't some nobody off the street. She had connections, authority, voice, and now he dragged her into the system on a lie. He muttered something she didn't catch, turned on his heel and disappeared again. She let out a slow breath. This was the pivot, the part where the hunter realizes he's the one being watched. She wasn't naive. The fallout would take time, but the wheels had started turning. And Rick Dalton, who'd built a career on fear and unchecked power, was about to find out what accountability feels like. Morning light spilled through the high windows of the Jefferson County Courthouse. The floors gleamed. The air inside was cold enough to bite through fabric, the kind of stillness that made people sit up straighter. Commander Janelle Hayes stood near the defense table in a navy blue blazer, sleeves sharp, collar clean. Her hair was tied back, her posture relaxed, but her eyes were locked in. No chains, no orange jumpsuit, just presence. Beside her, her attorney Mia Lattimore flipped through a folder like she was reading yesterday's weather. Cool, efficient, the kind of lawyer who didn't waste energy on anything she couldn't control. Janelle respected that. The courtroom began to fill. A couple of reporters whispered near the back. A few uniformed officers took seats near the wall. Word had gotten out. Then the door opened, and in walked Sergeant Rick Dalton. He carried himself like he still owned the room. Shoulders up, jaw set. But there was something in his walk, an extra stiffness in his step, a glance that didn't hold. The swagger was thinner now. He looked across the room. Their eyes met. He looked away first. Good. The judge entered. Alan Kirkland, gray hair, glasses, decades of law sitting heavy in his gaze. He settled in, adjusted the microphone. Let's get started. The prosecutor, Mr. DaCosta, rose from his table. Mid-50s, well-pressed suit, the kind of man who'd seen too much and still believed in due process. Your Honor, the matter before you today concerns the unlawful detainment of Commander Janelle Hayes during a routine traffic stop. He glanced toward Dalton. Furthermore, there's credible evidence of misconduct tied to the arresting officer, Sergeant Dalton. A murmur rippled across the room. Dalton's jaw tightened. Judge Kirkland nodded. Go on. DaCosta lifted a paper from the table. Commander Hayes has no criminal record. Graduate of the Naval Academy. Commendations for service. No prior citations. He paused, looked directly at Dalton. Yet she was arrested on the side of the highway over a broken taillight. Dalton cleared his throat. She was uncooperative, Your Honor. Uncooperative, DaCosta repeated. He held up a report. We pulled your body cam footage, we reviewed your statements, and we reviewed your record. He turned slowly. Your traffic stop history shows a significant pattern, an unusually high number of stops involving black drivers. Despite this district having a predominantly white population, the murmurs grew louder. Dalton shifted in his seat. That's not relevant. It is, the judge cut in. The tension in the room thickened. Mr. DaCosta continued. We'd like to present the footage, Your Honor. The judge nodded. Let's see it. The lights dimmed slightly. A monitor lowered at the front of the courtroom. The video began to play. There she was, on screen, calm, respectful, her voice steady. Then Dalton's voice, loud, dismissive. The command to exit the vehicle, the handcuffs, the smirk. The room was silent when the video ended. Judge Kirkland looked at Dalton over the rim of his glasses. You violated procedure. You escalated without cause, and you failed to mention most of that in your initial report. Dalton tried to speak. She resisted. The judge raised a hand. That's not what I saw. He reached for the file in front of him. The charges against Commander Hayes are dismissed. He brought the gavel down, sharp, final. And this court recommends an internal investigation into Sergeant Dalton's conduct, effective immediately. The snap in the air was almost audible. Dalton's face flushed red, hands clenched, but there was nothing he could do. Across the courtroom, Janelle exhaled. Not relief, not surprise, just confirmation. She gathered her folder, nodded to Mia, and stood. Dalton didn't move. She looked at him once more. Not with fear, not with hate, just clarity. He'd tried to bury her with lies, with a badge. And now the system that had once protected him was watching. He rose slowly, shoulders hunched now, eyes lowered. Reporters followed. Cameras waited outside. The story had already spread. But Janelle didn't care about the story. She cared about the shift. Today wasn't just her win. It was a crack in the shield that had guarded men like Dalton for too long. And cracks eventually split wide open. The courthouse hallway buzzed. Sergeant Rick Dalton pushed through the double doors like a man walking out of a collapsed building, not a courtroom. The weight of it pressed into his spine. Reporters gathered near the stairwell. Court staff murmured as he passed. He didn't meet anyone's eyes. The moment had flipped. He used to be the one people stepped out of the way for. Now every glance felt like judgment. His boots echoed too loudly against the tile. He kept his jaw locked, shoulders rigid, but he could feel the attention clawing at him. Then came the voice. Sergeant Dalton. He stopped cold. Chief Vernon Ellis stood near an open office door, arms crossed over his chest. Silver hair, clean uniform, and a stare that burned straight through nonsense. Inside. Now Dalton followed. The door shut behind him like a verdict. The chief tossed a folder onto the desk. It landed hard. What the hell were you thinking? Dalton didn't sit. I was doing my job. Chief Ellis scoffed. That's not what this looks like. He opened the folder, pulled out a still frame from the body cam video. Her. Calm. You. Grinning like it was a game. Dalton looked away. She was disrespectful. That's not a crime. The chief didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You think every time someone challenges you, it's open season? You think that badge means you get to act like a warlord? Dalton flinched. You don't get it, Chief. People like that? Stop. Right there. Ellis's tone dropped. Cold now. People like what? Dalton clenched his fists. The silence stretched. The chief sighed. You didn't even know who you were arresting, did you? Dalton shook his head. That shouldn't matter. It matters when the person you're cuffing has direct lines to the Pentagon. When her record makes you look like a rookie with a grudge. He tossed another sheet down. It's not just her. You've been flagged. What? Your stop history. Internal Affairs is crawling through it now. You've got a pattern, Dalton. The chief leaned forward. And we're not going down with you. Dalton's voice tightened. This is bull. Ellis cut him off. Don't say another word. You're being put on immediate suspension. Effective now. Turn in your badge. Turn in your weapon. Dalton stared at him like the ground had disappeared. You can't be serious. Ellis stood. Dead serious. IA will finish the review. If they find what I think they will, your career is over. Dalton didn't move. He just stood there, heat rising in his face. The fall was sharp, quick. He hadn't seen the edge until he was already past it. The chief opened the door. You have 5 minutes to clear your locker, that's it. Dalton walked out like a ghost. He passed the front desk. Bennett glanced up. Didn't say a word. Nobody did. Back at his patrol car, the keys felt heavier in his hand. The badge in his chest pocket was just metal now. No shield, no respect. Just a name tied to a headline. Across town, Janelle sat in a corner booth at a quiet cafe, stirring a cup of black coffee. She wasn't smiling, but she wasn't angry either. She was steady. The case had already gone viral. The footage from court, the headlines, Navy officer wrongfully arrested body cam. Footage sparked suspension, sergeant under investigation for profiling. She scrolled past the articles like they belonged to someone else. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mia. Dalton's out. Suspension official. Might be more coming. She sipped her coffee. Good. She looked out the window. A little boy was crossing the street with his mother, laughing about something, holding tight to her hand. Janelle watched him for a moment. That's who she'd been thinking about. This wasn't just about clearing her own name. It was about stopping men like Dalton before they could crush someone without the rank, the resources, or the record to fight back. Her phone buzzed again. This time the number was one she knew. She answered. Lieutenant Commander, came the voice. I assume you've seen the news? I have. How are you feeling? Janelle looked at her reflection in the cafe window. Still calm, like I did what I was supposed to do. The voice softened. The Department of Defense is watching closely. Don't be surprised if they reach out. Not interested in being a headline, she said. You already are. The voice paused. And whether you like it or not, what happened to you represents something bigger. She nodded to herself. She knew that. Dalton wasn't an isolated case. He was a symptom. This system didn't just need a PR fix, it needed accountability. Real, permanent change. She hung up and slipped her phone into her pocket. The storm wasn't over, but for the first time in a long time, the clouds were starting to break. The afternoon sky was clear, the streets still wet from the morning rain. Sunlight caught in puddles, painting gold streaks across the sidewalk. Commander Janelle Hayes stepped out of the cafe, phone tucked in her jacket pocket, steam still rising from her coffee cup. The weight of the past 24 hours should have lingered on her shoulders, but it didn't. She walked with her head high, same pace, same stride. The kind you earn, not inherit. Across the street, a little boy laughed as he tried to hop over puddles, holding tight to his mother's hand. He couldn't have been older than 6. Innocent, loud, free. Janelle paused for just a second, watching him. This was who she'd fought for. Yes, she'd stood up for herself, but it had never been just about her. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number, she answered. Lieutenant Commander Hayes? The voice was official, sharp, respectful. Speaking. This is Alex Marlowe from the mayor's office. We'd like to extend an invitation. There's interest in recognizing your actions. The way you handled the incident with professionalism and grace. Janelle didn't respond right away. She looked down the street. That's ironic, she said finally. I understand, Marlowe replied, but symbolism matters. Visibility matters. She considered it. I'll think about it. She ended the call and kept walking. She wasn't interested in a ceremony or a podium. That wasn't her style. But she did believe in visibility. She believed that every black girl who saw her story might understand they weren't powerless. She believed that every officer like Dalton, who once acted without fear of consequence, might pause the next time. One win doesn't fix the system, but it makes it crack, and cracks let the light in. Her steps were steady, but her thoughts moved fast. She thought about every time someone told her to keep her head down. She thought about the other names, those who never made it to a courtroom, whose footage never went viral, who never got a chance to speak their truth. Janelle hadn't set out to be an example, but that's what happens when you stand your ground. You become something bigger than yourself. Inside a quiet room 3 blocks away, Sergeant Dalton sat across from his union rep, staring at the paperwork in front of him. Suspension pending investigation. His badge had been logged into evidence, his weapon locked up. The same uniform that once gave him power now felt like a prison. What had started as a traffic stop had turned into a national conversation. His name was trending, for all the wrong reasons. And for the first time in his career, he realized just how fragile his authority had been. Janelle didn't need revenge. She didn't need to see him crumble. What mattered was that the system, for once, didn't just look away. That someone like her could walk into a courtroom and walk back out without her reputation stained, her record broken, or her life ruined. And that someone like him couldn't walk away untouched. She reached the corner and stopped at the light. A man nearby tapped his phone and looked up. Hey, you're the Navy officer, right? She turned slightly. I saw the video. You kept your cool. That was powerful. Janelle nodded once. Thank you, he smiled. My little sister just joined the military. She watched the whole thing, said it made her feel stronger. Janelle's chest tightened, not with pride, but with something quieter, deeper, responsibility. She crossed the street when the light changed, blending into the crowd again. That's how change works. One step, one story, one refusal to stay silent. Back at home, she placed her keys on the table, unzipped her jacket, and stood still for a moment. The silence inside her apartment felt different now. It wasn't heavy. It was earned. She glanced at her reflection in the hallway mirror. Still composed, still focused, still her. And yet something had shifted, not just in her life, but in how others saw her and how they might start to see themselves. The voice from her commanding officer echoed in her mind. Whether you like it or not, this is bigger than you. And he was right, because unchecked power stays unchecked until someone challenges it, until someone with enough clarity, enough training, enough nerve says, no more. Janelle had done exactly what she was trained to do. She held the line, and now the system would have to answer for it.